Vlad was born in 1952 in Kichevo, Macedonia, and worked for 20 years in the newspaper Utrinsky Vesnik, and then in New Macedonia. His colleagues loved him very much and considered him a kind-hearted man. However, it was recently revealed that he became a free correspondent due to disciplinary problems. Taneschi is a well-known journalist in Macedonia and has received many professional awards. He is a criminal writer. Readers have always shown great interest in his stories. In November 2004, a 61-year-old cleaner, Mitra Semyonovska, disappeared in Kichevo. The police were not particularly interested in finding her. Mitra was considered frivolous and antisocial, and there were rumors in town that she had run away from a jealous lover. 2 months later, the body of a woman was accidentally discovered by a garbage man. Her body was lying at the base of a steel pillar in a sports complex under construction. "God wanted me to find her," said the man who found Mitra. "As a child, this woman was kind to me and fed me. I grew up in a poor family with many children." Semyonovskaya lay in a pit. She was only wearing a blue sweater. Her body was wrapped in a plastic bag. The coroner found that she had been dead for 2 months. She was beaten, raped, and strangled with a telephone cord. The Kichevoska police reacted quickly and charged 2 young Macedonians, Ant Risteski and Igor Mersheki, who were under investigation, with the murder of a single pensioner in the neighboring village of Marcos in late 2004. Criminals broke into his house and started torturing him. During the investigation, the suspects also confessed to the murder of the cleaning lady, but unexpectedly refused to confess at the trial that covered Vlado Taneski. They denied involvement in the death of the woman, but did not deny the murder of the pensioner. 3 more women disappeared over the next 3 years, 2 of whom were later found in the same condition as the first. Taneschi covered all cases as thoroughly as the first murder, and his stories soon became beloved among the locals. In November 2007, a 56-year-old Ljubika Lakoska, a cleaning lady, as well as Mitra Semyonovska, went missing in Kichevo. She left the house in the evening, around 17:30, and disappeared, said her sister, Svitanka Lakoska. Vlad Taneski interviewed a friend of Ljubika, who said that she was a quiet and sensitive woman, and she had to work as a cleaner to support her family. 2 days after my mother's disappearance, I went to the police, said Vlado Taneski, the son of Ljubika, and then I went to the place where my mother worked and talked to them. They looked for clues, but found nothing. The police announced that they would investigate the case themselves, and in February, Lakoska's body was found in an abandoned building near a petrol station. The truck driver stopped to pee and saw his hand sticking out of a pile of rubbish on the rubble. The Lakoskas did almost the same with Semyonovskaya. They wrapped her in a plastic bag, and the head, pelvis, and legs in a few more bags. She was wearing a green blouse. The woman could only be identified by her wedding ring. According to the forensic report, Lakoska was dead for 10 to 30 days and died of suffocation. The killer again used the telephone cord as the murder weapon. There was male DNA in the vaginal swabs. Her stomach and intestine were empty, and forensic experts concluded that she had died of starvation. There were indications that the woman was held captive for a long time, repeatedly tortured and raped, and then strangled to death. Locals remember the disappearance of 73-year-old Gorica Pavel in Kichevo in 2003. They searched for her for some time, believing that she had gone to Skopje to work or suffered a heart attack in a location inaccessible to investigators. However, her disappearance became suspicious after 2 women were brutally murdered. The bodies were never found. Suddenly, Kichevo appeared in a criminal report in the main newspaper of the Firearm. Vlad Taneski's attempt to write without missing the slightest detail was a resounding success. The city is flooded with rumors. He wrote in the newspaper Utrinsky Gazette in February 2008. Police conducted an investigation, and many local residents believed that the crime was connected with the double murders in Malkuk and Kichevo, where 2 elderly people were killed for a small amount of money. However, Ristiski and Mircea, suspected of Simeonowski's terrible death, were already in prison when Lakoska was killed. Meanwhile, in the same article, Taneschi suggested that Lakoska had been run over on the highway, and that those responsible for the accident might have decided not to take her to hospital and committed a more serious crime. Taneschi concluded, "The police did not report whether there were suspects, but according to sources, the investigation is progressing well." Ivana Temelkovska, 65, a cleaning lady, disappeared on May 7, 2008. "I called my mother's mobile phone and a woman answered me. She said it wasn't my mother, and after I listened to her phone, I found her cell phone outside," said Ivana's son. The mobile phone was found near a kindergarten. Police assume that the kidnappers threw it out of a car window on the way to school. Temelkovsky's body was found 9 days later. Her body was dumped in a landfill near a football field played by a local amateur team. The woman was naked and wrapped in a negligee. She had multiple stab wounds on her head, a fuse in her right eye, and a confused neck. Her 5 ribs were broken. Her arms were almost black. She was raped many times. The best detectives and forensic experts came to Macedonia. The journalist Dimitar Karanov wrote, "They have created a profile of criminals." They stated that the perpetrator probably lived in the same city as the victim. According to his profile, he was a middle-aged man and quite strong. The crime was carefully planned and organized, and its intelligence appears to be above average. In addition, forensic experts found that the maniac suffered from deep sexual dissatisfaction in childhood and adolescence, which gradually took the form of pathology. Next to Ivana Temelkovsky's body was a sweater with blood stains that were not hers. The news reports indicated that the killer was type 3. New information has narrowed it down to a taxi driver, some of the victim's neighbors, and one other person. This is Vlad Taneski. It turned out that the police in Kichevo also read with interest the journalist's notes full of detailed information. You know what always surprised me about that story? Vlado never once told me or my colleagues that he was suspected. According to the journalist, he had spoken to Taneschi on the phone 20 times since he was first called for questioning. However, Vlad remained silent. The police think he exposed the killer. A number of factors point to this. For example, in the article, the serial killer of Kichevo Taneschi wrote how Ljubica Lakoska was kidnapped. According to his report, a car pulled up in front of the woman, and 2 men approached the cleaner and told her that her son was seriously injured. They then abducted her. Taneschi contacted police sources, but no information was in fact available. The police were also surprised that Taneschi found out how Zevin Temelkovskaya was strangled. These details were not disclosed to the journalists by the investigative authorities and were published in Kichev's article even before the results of the autopsy. When we read his article, we suspected he was the killer. He knew too much, said police spokesman Igor Kotevsky to journalists. Over a period of 4 months, the police conducted in-depth investigations, including psychological profiling of the perpetrators, forensic examinations, and hundreds of interviews, which identified the main suspect, Vlad Taneski. On the evening of 20 June 2008, dozens of police officers surrounded a secret police station surrounded by barbed wire on the outskirts of Kichevo. There, hidden among the tall trees, stood a dark 2-story country house. The windows were half closed by metal shutters, and the windows were well fixed. According to the police, this was Taneschi's house, where he tortured and raped his victims. The arrested journalist offered no resistance and was immediately taken to a nearby police station for intensive questioning. In his absence, a large number of pornographic CDs and pornographic magazines were found in the house. Shoes and clothing were also found, allegedly belonging to the deceased. However, the journalist's wife, Vesna, claimed that the clothes belonged to her mother-in-law. Telephone cable and rope were also found in the house. The next day, it was determined that Vlad Taneski's DNA was an exact match to the DNA found on the body of one of the dead women. This remains important evidence in a serial murder case. During the interrogation at the police station, Taneschi kept silent, gave evasive answers to many questions, and said that he did not remember anything. Said Dimitar Karanov, he claimed to be innocent and did not know the women personally. The detectives said that their conversations with him were in vain. He later confessed to his wife, Vesna Taneschi, that the police had not tortured him. He also expressed his determination to defend himself in court, so he was transferred to Tetovo City Prison with a public defender. According to Neuromentefika, the day after his transfer to prison, Vlad looked normal, without signs of depression or suicide. He was good with his cellmates. According to the investigation, on the night of June 23, Vlad Taneski quietly went to the toilet and killed himself. One of the cellmates woke up, heard the sound of spilling water, and went to the bathroom where he found Taneschi. The guards tried to revive him, but the doctor, who arrived shortly afterwards, also tried to revive him, but without success. Kichevo maniac died just 30 hours after being taken to prison, at the age of 56, and in September, Macedonian news reported that the investigation had to be officially closed because the country's criminal law did not allow for the prosecution of deceased persons. The investigation into Vlado Taneski was discontinued after his suicide. The media were no longer involved in the case, and residents stopped mentioning his name unnecessarily. The serial killer in the quiet Kichevo is now completely forgotten and is rarely, if ever, mentioned.